recording before we start on today's lesson. Okay, let's start on today's lesson. Okay, first of all, let's start off with what we're going to cover for our stuff. Today we're going to look at this thing called the League of Nations. Okay, and what we're going to understand a little bit about this chapter is to focus a little bit on the failure of the League of Nations. And to understand the failure of the League of Nations, first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to look at the background. Okay, so today's lesson, we want to understand a little bit about why the League of Nations was formed and what was the background and in what context that we understand about the LON. Okay, for today's lesson, okay, first of all, I want you to take a look at the background of the LON. Now, the LON was a organization that was formed on the 10th of January, 1920, and it was found with its headquarters in Geneva and Switzerland. As we always know, Switzerland is considered a country that is the country of number one neutrality. It chose to be neutral in all so-called conflict, and that was why Switzerland is never being involved in any forms of attack or invasion, because the country has actually maintained itself in terms of its neutrality. Now, what we understand is that at that point of time, when we talk about the League of Nations was actually the brainchild of President Wilson. President Wilson was the US president, and he as a president wanted to form an organization, and this organization is to help to maintain international peace. And that's why he created this thing called the 14 points, which he mentioned at the end of the First World War during the Treaty of Versailles during the Paris Peace Conference. In the previous SLS lesson, you have learned a little bit about President Wilson and the things that he wanted to do. Now, the League of Nations was one of his aims. And that was why, if you remember during the previous SLS lesson where we talked about the conferences, most of the situation that the Americans were doing was that they were actually very, very so-called, they are more sympathetic towards the so-called the leaders. Okay, they are sympathetic towards the German because they wanted the German to, in this case, he wanted the German to have the opportunity to rebuild itself, because they believe in this idea that the world needs to have a new change in terms to have this thing called a new environment. Now, what you see over here is a picture of the LON. Okay, and if you look at this picture very, very carefully, and I want you to take about a minute or so to look at the screen that you have now, I want you to take a closer look and see what is interesting about the picture over here. This was a photograph that was taken about the LON in its inauguration. And I want you to take a closer look and see what is interesting about this picture. Okay, I'm giving you maybe about a minute to do so. Take a look at this picture. And then I want you to write down some of the observation. And later I'll share with you what are the observation that you can see. Okay. Now, if you have been looking at this picture, there might be some things that you may have observed. One, you may have observed a couple of things. I think most of you will be able to see it. First thing, you will notice that in this picture, there were only a few so-called Asian representatives. Now, this is a very weird situation, because if you talk about an organization that is called the League of Nations, which is an organization that takes care of the whole world, there are only 3 Asian representatives in this whole entire lineup of leaders. These are all supposedly leaders of the League of Nations. So you only see 3 Asians. So that means that the Asians are not totally represented. So that's one thing that you may have observed. Now, the second thing that you may also observe is that why are there so little members? Why is there so many people, so little people taking a photograph in this inaugural League of Nations? If this is supposed to be a league that represents the whole world, shouldn't there be even bigger number? So that is already something very, very interesting about the membership of the League of Nations, which we are going to talk about it in greater detail in the next lesson. So if you notice over here, you have not easily about 20 to 30 representatives. Is it the whole entire population in the world itself? Okay. Now, the other situation, okay, the other situation is, okay, in this whole entire LON, there are also very little Asian numbers. You can see this two that looks a little bit like a Japanese or maybe Korean, and you also notice a picture that looks like a Chinese. So that means that there are also very little Asian representatives. What about representative? At the point of time, 19 something, what about representative in Asia, Southeast Asia, or even places you don't see any black, okay, or African nation being represented, or even people from the Middle East? So is this really a league of nation as what it claims it is? Okay, so that's something that I want you to think about when we go through today's lesson. So what we're going to cover in today's lesson? Today's lesson, I want to start the morning by giving you certain an inquisition to try to look at and understand a little bit about what this League of Nations is all about. Now, I am giving you a Google worksheet. You already have the link if you have downloaded the PowerPoint slide. If not, I'm going to show you the link in a short while. Now, in this whole activity, you are going to do a Google worksheet that the whole class is going to work on it. And what's going to happen? You are going to be given a worksheet. Okay, you already also have the soft copy of it. It consists of what we call the covenants of the League of Nations. Now, what is a covenant? A covenant is a set of rules and regulations. It's a little bit like an agreement and a pact that was accepted by all the members of the organization. Now, there are a total of almost about 20 over to 30 articles. Then each article represents a certain point of agreement. And what I want you to do is that as a class, we're going to focus on the activity that is found in the covenant. And what you need to do is that you need to do the following things. One, you need to infer from the article, okay, from the whole entire covenant, that particular article that tells you what is the function of the LON. And then what I want you to do is on the third column, I want you to write down what are the possible challenges that you will see when you see all those terms and articles in the covenant. So there are two things that I want you to do. One, I want you to read on the first column, what is the article all about? What are some of the challenges? And then what are the functions? So these are the three things that I want you to do. Find the function, and then find the challenges and write it in the second and the third column. Now, the link is found over here. Okay, the link is found in the next set, but this is what I want you to do. You already have, you know your register number. This is what is going to happen. Register number 1 to 7, I want you to work on article 1 to 8. 8 to 16, I want you to work on article 9 to 12, and so on and so forth. So I want to show you this particular set. You already have the PowerPoint slide. You should know which article you are going to look at. So be clear what article you are supposed to do. Can you jot them down very quickly? I'm going to show you the link in the next page. The link is actually very easy to remember. The link is tinyurl.com 3E4 LON 2020. Okay, tinyurl.com/3E4 LON 2020. Okay, so I'm going to give you approximately 10 minutes to work on this. Okay, I'm going to go offline for a while, or should I say I will just be away for a while, but I want you to take the next 10 minutes to work on the article that you have over here. Okay, work on the articles that is given to you, the documents that is given to you. Okay, spend the next 10 minutes, and after that, I will discuss the article with all of you in class, and then we're going to summarize to understand what does the League of Nations stand for and what is it that they wanted to do. And that will give you a good overview and introduction of what the LON is all about. Okay, is everybody okay so far? Okay, so let me repeat again. tinyurl.com/3E4 League of Nations LON 2020. Okay, so go and take a look at this article. Okay, and then I want you to do the task that you're supposed to do. Is that clear so far? Okay, so for the latecomers, okay, the two of them latecomers, okay, I have already started with the activity. Now what I want you to do, I want you to go online, okay, go to this article that you have, okay, go to this article that I already shared with all of you. Good. I noticed that some of you are already online. Very good. Now I want you to look at the article found on page 2. Okay, it's actually start on page 2. Focus on the article. I want you to fill up column number 2 and column number 3. What is the function and what are the success or problem or challenges that you think this article will going to have to in making things for the LON? Okay, time on my watch is 8:53. Let's end this at 9:03. I'm giving you 10 minutes to work on it. Okay, so if your friends have already written down, you feel that that's a valid answer, just add on to it. After that, we're going to do a quick discussion on this. Okay, is everybody okay so far? Guys, are you okay? If you're okay, can you start off with your task now? Okay. Okay, guys, I'm going to disappear for a while. Okay, I'm going to take a short break. Can you work on your task? And after that, then I will go and work on the task that is on the worksheet, the Google sheet that is given to you. And then in about 7 minutes time, we'll go through the answers together. Okay, guys, you have about 2 more minutes, and then we'll do a wrap up. Okay, then after that, I will share the screen with all of you, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, I think some of you might be still working on the document, but what now I want you to do is that I'm going to show you the document again, and we're going to go through the document together as a class. And from then on, we're going to do you can look at your friend's response, and then we're going to understand a little bit on how this whole entire covenant, from this covenant, let's try to understand what are the aims of the LON. Okay, so let me just share the screen again. And I'm going to talk about okay, let's move on to Safari. Okay. Okay, all of you should be able to see the screen that I have over here. Okay, so this is the screen. Let me just increase the view a little bit so that we can all see it very, very clearly. Now, the whole idea is that this whole entire covenant, aim of the League of the Nation is actually written in the form of the covenant. Okay, like I mentioned to you, this is actually the aim, and you'll focus on the covenant. Okay, let's see what were some of your friends' discussion. Okay, let's look at article number 1 to 3. Okay, let's look at article number 1 to 3. Sorry, 1 to 7. And to understand article number 1 to 7, first thing first. Okay, I want you to take a look at article number 1 to 7, and all of them summarize. Okay, of course, they're actually more lengthy things, but for the interest of this discussion, I actually summarize it to make it a little bit more easier for you. Now, there's something very interesting about article number 5. Okay, if you look at article number 5 states that decisions that have to be made must require the agreement of the members of the LON. So this was something that was highlighted. So what does this tell you? What does this hint to you about the LON? It represents like what some of you have written down. Okay, it represents this idea of freedom. It represents this idea of freedom, which means that it allows this whole idea that this whole organization is an example of what we call a democratic organization. Okay, it's a democratic organization. Okay, the democratic organization. Okay, later you can download this copy for your own references, or you can actually use this as a springboard for you to jot down the keynotes that you need to focus on. So this represents that this is actually a democratic organization. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, there's something very interesting about this. It says that every decision must require the agreement of the members. So other than the idea that democratic organization, it also highlights that this organization emphasizes a lot on this idea of consensus. Okay, that means that democratic organization as a result of consensus allow the League of Nations to work. So the League of Nations works on this context that everybody plays a role in deciding what they need to do in terms of maintaining world peace. Now, there's also something very interesting about it. So, okay, like what you mentioned, it helps to maintain world peace. Okay, but however, there is actually a big issue when it comes to this. There is a big issue when it comes to this. I want you to pay attention to this statement here. It says that the agreement, the decision requires the agreement of all the members. Okay, it requires the agreement of all the members. Okay, so if you look at this very, very carefully, what does it actually say? That means that there is actually a potential challenge or problem that the LON is about to face. And the challenge that you could, which interestingly, not many of you pick it up, it means that it requires, okay, consensus of all. Okay, because it requires consensus of all, this will imply that it will create a potential problem because there is difficult. Like for example, if you have even if a classroom of 30 of you, it's very, very difficult for you to come to a common decision. So when you require the consensus of all the people, it is going to make decision very difficult. Okay, because you have this idea of you need to have democracy. So decision making is going to be even more difficult because it's not going to be so easy for everybody to agree on the same thing. So this is the problem, a possible problem. While it is good because it helps to maintain peace, that everybody have a say in the running of the government, and that is this idea of democracy and consensus. But we also notice that there is going to be a potential problem because if everybody needs to make a decision and everybody needs to agree on it, decision making is going to be very, very difficult because everybody is going to work on their self-interest. Okay, all countries are going to do that. So that's one challenge that the LON is going to face. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's focus our attention on the next one. Second thing, it talks about this idea of reduction of national armament. The reduction of national armament. What does that mean? It means that one of the role is to maintain peace and harmony and reduce damage that could be inflicted by arms. So that means that the League of Nations key function was to what we call disarmament. Okay, so that is one function that they are supposed to do. They are supposed to lower down the amount of weapons that we are using for the world. Okay, and why is that so? Because if you have lesser weapons, it will help to reduce the risk of war. Thank you. This is a very good answer. It will help to reduce the risk of war. Because if you don't have weapons, obviously there will be a sense of peace. If you don't have weapons to threaten one another, obviously there will be a sense of peace. And these plans will continue to be formulated and they will be advised on the countries and also be advised by the private enterprise. So that means that they are actually going to do the function of, disarmament. Okay, the function of disarmament for the LON. Okay, so this is what we call one of the key roles that the LON is supposed to do. Okay, so you have picked that out. So that is one of the key roles that the LON is supposed to do. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next, you'll notice that article number 9, article number 10 is also this idea of a permanent disarmament commission. So again, it's focused on the idea of disarmament. So it helps to promote international peace, cooperation, and security. Very good. Very well, very well. In this way, by reducing the number of arms, it will avoid war and maintain peace. Okay, it will avoid war and maintain peace. Now, the next thing, it says that they will prevent, article number 10 says that they will preserve, respect, and preserve against aggressive, external aggressive aggression. So in this case, what you see over here, this preservation of is to avoid, to prevent colonization, respecting each other's territory. This is exactly this idea of the avoidance of war. So that means that the League of Nations is trying to avoid war and its job is to maintain peace. So that means they want to respect the people and want to avoid war and maintain peace. So this is one of the function of the LON. Okay, this is one of the function of the LON. So by doing that, it will mean that, okay, it will mean that the countries, okay, the members will be able to prevent conflict. But if you look at this very, very carefully, one of the key things that I want to bring to your attention is this. Do you notice that it's written down here is about the members? So what does that mean also? It means that non-members are free to do what they want. So will that be now a potential problem that is going to be presented to the LON? Remember, the LON do not have a big number of members, as you could see from the previous slide where you see that picture over there. You notice that they don't have a lot of members. So that means there are more non-members than members. So does that mean that the non-members can do exactly what they want? So this is what I mean by some of the problem, because they may be taking territory. Okay, they will take territory, okay, and they will be taking territories for their own power. So will that be a potential issue in threatening what we call the so-called the peace in the country? Okay, let's look at article number 11. Okay, I hope I'm not going too fast, but not to worry. If you cannot follow what's going on, you can take a look at the video itself, and that will give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, let's move on to article number 11 then. Okay, article number 11 says that the war is a threat, and any war and is a matter of concern. Sorry, article number 11. All these things are war of concern, and the league will take action to prevent. Okay, the league will take action to prevent any action, anything that is to safeguard the peace. So they want to keep the country peaceful. So again, the function, as you could see in article number 9, 10, 11, that's why those of you who are doing 9, 10, 11, all these things, the function that you should have picked up is that the whole idea is that it is done to maintain peace. Okay, if you have noticed, for those of you who are doing article 9, 10, 11, 12, all the articles seem to be grouped under the same idea. That's exactly why I wanted you to do it. The whole article is actually focusing on this idea of maintaining peace. Okay, so this is actually to maintain peace, to try to solve problem, okay, to try to solve problem and to prevent the fighting that's happening around in the League of Nations. Okay, so that's to solve problem. So again, when we talk about this idea about any war, they will take any action. And the idea is that this any action means that it could be an action that could result to war. It could also be a diplomatic action. So again, the question is, what is the type of action that was known? So the problem is that there was no stated action. There was no stated action. And it is up to the league, okay, to decide what action to be taken. So whether the action is effective, okay, effective or non-effective, we are not sure about that. So that is a possible challenge, okay? Whether the action that's taken, would it be effective or whether is it non-effective? So this is another challenge that we're talking about that the League of Nations was going through at this point of time, okay? Now, let's move on to the next one, okay? Again, the same idea. Okay, article number 12, they say that if there is going to be any dispute, they will submit the matter to arbitration and judicial discussion, which means that they now have what we call a organization to, so this to prevent wars. Okay, good. So the idea is to prevent war, to maintain peace, to have, okay, to have what we call an international, okay, board of arbitration. That means that there is actually somebody who will decide how the matter will be resolved, and that will be within the League of Nations, which is a good thing. Okay, which is a good thing. Okay, sorry, International Board of Arbitration within the LON. Okay, so this is actually a good thing because it helps to resolve matters diplomatically. Okay, because you don't have to resort to war. Resolve matters diplomatically, which is exactly what we have been talking about so far. Okay, it is to maintain peace. Okay, so this is the function to maintain peace. Okay, so all these things are examples, again, the same function about what the LON is supposed to do, and that is to maintain peace. Now, what is the problem that they have over here? Okay, what do they have over here? First thing first, they say that if there's an issue, they will resolve it they will submit the matter either to arbitration or judicial. So what happened? The question is, what happened if the countries are not in agreement with the decision? Have we talked about that? Okay, there was no mention at all. So what happened if they are not happy with the decision? So what will still go on? A war will still be happening. Okay, will there still be war? If there's war, what is going to happen as a result of this? So again, the League of Nations did not anticipate problems like this. Okay, what happened if the countries are not in agreement? Second thing, this again talks about this. Okay, if you look at this set of article over here, this decision is only binding to who? To members. So if you have a situation where you have a conflict, example, you have a conflict between a member and a non-member, so what is going to happen? So let's say if I have a dispute that's going on, and this dispute happened between a member and non-member, first thing, are they going to send it over to the arbitration to make that decision, or are they going to resolve the problem using war? And even then, if at the end of it, they decided that they're going to submit the matter to arbitration, what will happen? Will the decision be something that is pleasing to everyone? So that is again another challenge that the LON is facing. Okay, now let's move very quickly. Okay, so if somehow I hope that you get a hang of it. Okay, you get a hang of it. What does it actually mean? Now, this is the continuation. It says that they will not, okay, resort to war. So that means that within the party itself, within the situation, they will not resort to any form of violence. Okay, so good. That means that it will result to, okay, it will not result to war, because that means that they will not fight a battle with countries from happening. So this is to allow further war to be and deter war from happening. So function of the LON was to do the following thing: to deter war from happening, and at the same time to disallow war from happening. So you rightfully what your group or what those of you who have discussed this will happen. So again, this is a situation. If one country rebels and they feel that they are treated equally, they could be biased, they make a biased decision, fair enough. But the key idea again is this: it is only pertaining to what? It's only pertaining to members. It only applies to members. So if you are non-member, you are again not involved, and you are also not liable to observe everything that's mentioned over here. So that means that I can still choose to resort to war. So that is another problem. Okay, again, members agree that they will submit the issue to the LON. So again, same situation. It only applies to members. Okay, so all these articles seem to suggest that they will, within the members itself, they will try to prevent war from happening. But however, the problem is that, okay, only if they decided to help one another, and it only applies to members. That's the key thing that's happening in the LON. So again, you already see one potential problem already. If the league doesn't have everybody coming in, then this whole entire thing is going to be just a paper tiger. Okay, let's look at article number 18 to 12. Okay, 18 to 22. So every treaty that's will be registered. So the reason why they do that was that, if you remember from this lesson, we talked about the LON was supposed to prevent. Okay, the whole idea was that they wanted to have this whole situation to prevent the presence of secret treaty. Okay, now this whole entire chapter, we have actually learned it online. The reason why there was World War One in the first place was that the different countries, okay, uh, the different countries that were fighting World War One, they got themselves into World War One because there were many secret agreements that was going on. Because of the secret agreement, okay, that resulted to Germany coming into the war, the rest of the allies coming in to fight a war between Austria and Austria-Hungary and Serbia. Now, because of this, the whole idea is that they wanted to prevent by having this so-called open alliances going on. Everybody needs to review exactly who are they actually working with. It will create what we call a more transparent world order. So that was the purpose that they have. But again, the whole idea is that even though for all these things that is happening, not all countries are actually in the league. That means that secret treaty can still happen. And when secret treaty still happen, what will result to is that you will still have a situation where war may still happen. Okay, so that is another challenge that the LON is facing. Okay, now the next one, okay, let me move very quickly again. The next one is that they talk about what to do with the colonies. Okay, they talk about what they do with the colony. And in this case, it was mentioned that Germany colonies and Turkey colony will now come under the control or the tutelage of the advanced idea. So this is exactly what the League of Nations is supposed to do. The function is to ensure, okay, to so-called to look after the colonies, and the idea is to provide what we call self-determination. Self-determination meaning to allow the country to have the right to choose the government that they want. So that was what the League of Nations was supposed to do. So in this case, when the countries are being taken over by the League of Nations and given to advanced countries, the problem is what happened, okay, when advanced country decided to take possession of them. So what will happen? So that means that the country actually did not get their freedom. So there's no freedom given to the colony. So that was a potential problem. They just changed from one colonial master to another colonial master. So that is a possible problem that the League of Nations did not anticipate. And finally, let's move on to the last three articles. Okay, for those of you who are doing the last three articles, you will notice that they talk about something very, very interesting. They talk about this fair and humane conditions and so on and so forth. Okay, which I think you all have pointed it out. Okay, just treatment of the natives. Okay, all these things are what we call the examples that they are highlighted. And of course, if you talk about this thing about the freedom of communication and so on and so forth, all these things that is highlighted in this particular article, this few article, okay, corporation, establishment of the voluntary Red Cross organization, etc., etc. All these things, okay, all these things are very, very interesting because they actually promote this one. Article number 25 over here is actually for the improvement of health. Very good. So that means that the function is for social economic development of the world. Okay, so that is the function of the LON. So one of the functions that they were supposed to do was to develop the world so that there is some form of social economic development. And the other one, of course, this is also to this idea about safe communication, taking steps to limit, supervise that, and some we have quoted all these things. All these quotients are actually talking about the function to improve condition of the people, so around the world. And why is it that they wanted to focus on improving the condition around the world? A very, very simple reason is because if the world situation, world is in better condition, and what will that imply? It will implies that there are less possibility of war. So that is actually a very positive benefit that they were actually trying to work on. Okay, so if the world is in a better condition that was created, it will result to a better condition, and that means that there's actually lesser possibility of war. Okay, so what you have over here, when you look at the aims of the League of Nations, what you actually see is that you actually can use the covenant to detect and to make a guess of what was actually the aim. And if you look at all the documents and those things I've highlighted, you'll notice that there were key functions that was being mentioned. One, it was trying to maintain peace. And that was one of the key functions. To the League of Nations, whatever that they do was to maintain peace. Another thing that they were also very busy trying to do that was to promote some form of cooperation by disarming, because disarming will lead to them maintaining peace. And if you look at the last few functions that we were talking about just now, again, when they want to make the world a better place, they will actually try to make sure that there is some form of condition improvement that is to prevent the lesser possibility of war. So if you are bright enough and you observe what I've been talking about so far, all these things seem to suggest one thing. There is only one key function that the League of Nations was supposed to do, and that is to prevent war from happening. And all the things that they were doing was just to make sure that war would not happen. Now, I'm going to wrap up this part of the slides. I know I've exceeded my time a little bit, as usual. Let me just wrap up this last bit of the lesson with all of you. Okay. Now, just now I already mentioned to you this document, and I will keep this document for you to make a copy for yourself, and you can actually edit it and add on now that you have a greater idea what's going on. But what you notice that is that we have focused on this. You notice that there is why was the League of Nations formed was because there was a lot of problem that was happening. Remember when we talk about World War I, World War I was a problem. Even though the war has ended, to prevent the war from happening again, you need to come up with a solution. And the LON is the solution. It is to make sure that it will not happen, will not have another war again. So all the problems that was highlighted, all the so-called the alliances that was going on, the militarization, the armament that was going on in the First World War, the secret treaties and all these things were problems. And these problems were trying to be resolved by the LON. And that can be seen in the covenant, the agreement that was being made. So what we have been talking about is this. Okay, these are the six. Okay, these are the six so-called objectives. And if you look at all these objectives, was something that was mentioned just now. There was a set of law. That's why you have the covenant. There's a set of law. There's a arbitration of justice and so on. They also want to control world armament. They want to make sure that all the treaties that they know are all being announced. Everybody has awareness of this. They want to promote some form of cooperation, and of course to make sure there's peace and justice, and also to ensure that the relationship will be diplomatic and it will be just, so as at the end of it, they also want to promote social and economic cooperation. By doing all these things, the aim was to make sure that a possibility of another war will not happen again. But what you have also noticed from the covenant just now was that the covenant did not anticipate a lot of problems, the challenges that we're facing. For example, the membership, the problem about disarmament. How are you going to control disarmament? How are they going to make sure people agree to their decision? All these things I'm going to talk about in the next lesson itself. Okay, so with that, we'll come to the end of our lesson. I hope that it make a little bit more sense to all of you. Okay, this chapter on the League of Nations, or on the League of the issue on the League of Nations, is actually to tie up the things that's happening in the previous lesson. Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. Okay, I'm going to put up this video because this video is already on recording. I'm going to put up this video and I'm going to put it online for all of you in case you did not catch some of the things that's being mentioned. Go and download the document, and later in the day, I will upload tomorrow's live lesson for all of you. And then we will go through And I will promise you, I will finish a little live lesson a little bit shorter so that you have a little bit of time to ask questions if you need to. Okay? I'm very sorry I exceeded the time. Because this is the first time I actually doing a live lesson with you, and I've incorporated an activity which I never do in my previous classes. I hope that gives you a little bit of a little bit activity to prevent you from falling asleep. So I hope that you have fun in today's lesson. Go and read out on the note, and tomorrow come prepared with some questions. I will end my lesson in about half an hour time, and then we'll go through some of the doubts that you have or some of the clarification that you need to do. Okay? That's all for today. We're going to end off today's lesson. Okay, now what I want you to do is very